Hello, and thank you for listening to the first ever episode of the Shark Trust podcast. This is the podcast where we go behind the scenes of shark conservation, of how it works, and how you can help make a difference. And what a better way to start than to have our first guest being the CEO of the Shark Trust, Paul Cox.
Morning.
Good morning. Thank you for coming on and joining us. Please could you just first off kind of tell us a bit about kind of your story and how you got involved in the Shark Trust and into shark conservation?
So I've been with the Shark Trust for about 10 years, and the Shark Trust had been around for 15 or so years before my time here. Prior to that, I worked for the National Marine Aquarium as Director of Conservation, and this opportunity to come and join the Shark Trust and all the great work that they're doing came along, so I jumped at it.
And since you've kind of been here, so you said you've been here like 10 years, how has the Shark Trust kind of evolved in that time? Has there been any like cool campaigns and stuff like that? How has shark conservation progressed?
That's a big question. Yeah. So, I think it's worth saying that prior to my time here, a lot was done, a lot was achieved. The Trust has always kind of based itself around science-based efforts, and has always kind of prided itself on connecting with the public and not just kind of doing what it does behind closed doors, but trying to get out there and connect people with sharks and shark conservation. When I joined, it wasn't long after a major piece of work on the European finning regulation was kind of finalised. So in 2013, after a many year campaign, that piece of work was completed, and so that kind of took the Shark Trust in a new direction, which was to start focusing more on fisheries management specifically, and on trying to achieve sustainable fisheries management. So during my time here, starting just slightly before the No Limits campaign started up, and we've kind of rolled that through, and so we've had some really good successes in terms of catch limits on blue sharks and retention bans on mako sharks, and really kind of starting to set precedents for more and more fisheries management over the years. And we've kind of expanded more from being a UK organisation towards being a European organisation through the work that they did with the European finning regulation, and then now we've started to expand our influence more globally.
And you said fisheries management a couple of times in there.
Did I?
Yeah. It
comes out quite a lot.
Could you say kind of like what is fisheries management? When you say that is how the kind of direction we've gone into? Yeah,
well, it's a cornerstone of what we've always done. I mean, so sharks and rays and their cousins, the biggest impact upon them and the biggest threat to their future flourishing is the impact of overfishing. And there are various reasons for that, partly to do with drivers of demand for specific shark products, but also just because sharks, they're inherently slow growing, late to mature, give birth to few young at a time, and so they're kind of more like mammals in terms of their life history. And so when they share the water with species that maybe reproduce more quickly, and they become caught up in fisheries with species that reproduce more quickly, it's more difficult for them to maintain their populations when they're being fished. So it's really important that you have effective fisheries management, which is essentially making sure that science is at the heart of the management process in terms of understanding the status of the populations, how healthy the populations are, what level of fishery could be applied in order that fisheries could take what they need or even what they catch incidentally, and the population and the species maintain their health. So that kind of science-based fisheries management, understanding where things are and what can be done, and the enforcement of that is a really important part of what we do to ensure long-term survival of shark populations.
And you spoke about kind of one of their main vulnerabilities being their life history, and that kind of slow, kind of weird, kind of mammal-like kind of life history. Could you talk little bit about that, because that comes up so much kind of in the work that we do.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. If you look at some of the take cod as a commercial species, a fish that we're all well acquainted with, and fish fingers and all that. They are broadcast spawners, so they will, in a year, perhaps 60 million eggs will come out of a single female cod, and a proportion of those will make it through to the adult stage, whereas sharks produce very few. They're late to mature. So, I mean, the extreme is a Greenland shark, which doesn't mature until about 150 years old. So you can imagine that kind of how you maintain a population when it takes you to 150 before you even start to reproduce. But the majority of shark species, you're into the 10s, 20s of years. And so that kind of late maturity obviously means the whole thing kind of slows the whole thing down. And then they produce fewer young, again, slows the whole reproduction process down. So that inherent kind of vulnerability, if you like, is really at the heart of why we need to be so careful with shark conservation, or how we have to deal with sharks as, yes, they are fish. Yes, they share the same niches, the same environmental niches as other commercial fish. But because of this slow-growing nature, they need to be dealt with slightly differently and more cautiously.
And you were speaking there, you say you've got the Greenland sharks kind of at this extreme end, and then you said other sharks will be 10s, 30s until they do it, and it's kind of that individual life history as well. So a lot of them will have this mammal-like life history, but then some sharks would be classed as kind of like more sustainable.
I think that's a really good point. I think that whole one of the things I always say is that there's almost no sentence that starts with "a shark is" that's true, because sharks, there's so many different sharks, different life histories, different behaviours, different environments that they live within, ecosystems that they live within. So each one has to be kind of dealt on a separate level, and so different conservation needs. So as you say, some species, like the blue shark is a good example, reproduce a little bit more quickly, they reproduce younger, they give birth to more young. So potentially there you've got a shark that could be fished and provide the protein requirements and sustain fisheries, whilst at the same time could be maintained at a sustainable level. Whereas in contrast to the blue shark, something like a mako shark, which if you to the untrained eye, quick look at each of those, you can, they're very similar. The mako shark has a very different, much slower reproductive history. So therefore you have to treat those two species in very different ways. One could be fished sustainably, one probably can't.
And those two species are two species that the Shark Trust have worked in quite a bit. Yeah. Did you want to go a little bit into that campaign, because that was when you were here, and kind of how that worked and the outcomes?
Yeah. Well, so the No Limits campaign, which started in 2014, I think, that kind of identified a number of shark species which were being fished for which there's essentially uncontrolled fisheries. So there wasn't there weren't science-based catch limits in place. There wasn't a recognition that these were being fished commercially. So fishing was just kind of happening without any control. And so No Limits campaign aimed to kind of target those fisheries and understand what levels of fishery could be could allow a sustainable population. And so the first species that was worked on was the blue shark. And there were several years, there were, a huge number of petitions, old school petitions, written petitions, and aquariums in particular helped us to gain many signatures to support that campaign. And it kind of moved fairly slowly for the first few years of that campaign. Then we, through the formation of the Shark League, which is a partnership program that we're part of, started to engage with what's called the regional fisheries management organisations. These are the international organisations that manage the fishing on the high seas, those areas outside of national jurisdiction. So they're everyone's, if you like. So all the nations that fish in those waters kind of get together and set catch limits and determine the science that needs to be done to make sure that they're being fished sustainably. So as we started to engage with the regional fisheries management organisations, we started to move that campaign forward, and then 2017 there was a push for blue shark, and then I think 2019 we eventually got the first international catch limit on blue sharks, and then Mako's came along in their wake. And again, this is, as I was saying before, this is a very different situation where blue sharks, a catch limit was sufficient at the time, and obviously we carry on working on that, on making sure that catch limit is capped off and kept at precautionary level. But then the Mako came along, and the situation was very different. The science said that the population of Makos couldn't maintain that level of fisheries. So in that case, we had to advocate for a full retention ban, essentially banning fishing of Makos in the Atlantic. And that work kind of picked up between 2019, 2020, 2021 when we got the first retention ban. So those two species really kind of good contrast, and show that you can achieve stuff if you have the science behind you, if you have clear purpose, and if you get public support, then you can achieve that change. So we're just kind of building on that now.
And it kind of shows this kind of how long shark conservation kind of works, like over many years, but at the end of it, it's kind of been, you did achieve what you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, that is a good point. I mean, yes, it is everything that we do. You need patience and tenacity, definitely. You need to kind of set your course and keep following that course, and not be set back, and not kind of drift from what you're trying to achieve. And I mean, it's kind of, it's metaphorically, the sharks have this long life history, and what we do takes a long time. But that kind of slow moving process, and recovery will take a long time as well. Once you get your measures in place, then that recovery process can take years and years and years. So the whole thing is a kind of exercise in patience and tenacity.
And so we've kind of looked, like, sharks are vulnerable due to their life history. We've talked about the kind of levels in which they've been fished and the ways that we work out the Shark Trust to try and kind of put limits on that. But why is it important that those limits come in? Why are sharks so important to the ocean?
Well, I mean, there are a number of reasons cited. I mean, so you can kind of come at this from different angles. So you can come at it from the I guess the sort of scientific angle, which is that they perform ecosystem service as top predators, apex predators. Many of them at many times in their life history are apex predators or top predators, and so as in that role, they kind of help to sort of control and stabilize the system. It's not, these species, these animals don't exist in vacuums. They all kind of interact in a complex web. Yes, the kind of those at the top. We're seeing this you see this in terrestrial systems on the land, where we've historically removed top predators. And now there are moves afoot to kind of try to start to reintroduce those predators, because it's realised that the impact that they have on the ecosystem, right the way down to the insects that live on land, they're all kind of affected by that kind of top down. So that's one argument that's put forward. The other argument you can put forward is about their economic value. So they do have sharks and rays have an economic value. Many of them they will support fisheries, and that's kind of large commercial fisheries and also small subsistence fisheries in different parts of the world. They also support ecotourism. So there are a number of different kind of values that you could place on sharks economically, but also they have a cultural value. So they have, in many cultures, sharks are kind of revered. In our culture, I think they're they have a very special place in our heart, and they're just very cool animals, and it would be remiss just to kind of go, well, ignore them and let them disappear on our watch, kind of thing. We've been lucky enough to inherit this amazing environment full of these incredible species, so we should try and pass them on. So I think for me, that's the one that's what it's about. It's about just the fact that they're incredible animals, and so we should do whatever we can to ensure that we maintain those populations at a sustainable level.
Yeah, I've always tried to justify a reason why sharks are important, and kind of taking those stories of why they support ecosystem stuff. But
I feel like you shouldn't have to justify why they should be there. You should, if you want them not to be there, you should have to justify that, which is a more difficult thing. I mean, you shouldn't have to justify why a species deserves to exist. Yeah. It just doesn't make sense. But we have to do it all the time. Yeah. Why do they matter? Well, they do. That's it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've never thought about it that way. And part of the reason is probably due to the way that we kind of learn about sharks, whether it's through school, whether it's through the media, all these different things. And you work a lot with, you've been working with aquariums, different science communicators to develop a communication toolkit.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about?
I'd love to. Yeah, I'll talk about it endlessly if you like. How long you got?
Not that long.
Yeah. So, well, as I mentioned, like I came into this world, my first job in marine biology, if you like, or in conservation, was working in an aquarium. And I saw face to face every day. I spent my time just standing in an aquarium. Occasionally I walked around, talking to people about what was there and their attitudes, appreciations, and knowledge of the animals that they were seeing. And so that kind of gives you a real early sense of like, this is an important thing. It's an important thing for us to be able to communicate why this stuff matters and why it matters to us and what the challenges are and what we can do about it. And so I've always been really passionate about the communication side of things. I think it's, as important as the kind of the advocacy work and the biological and the science and the biological conservation work. This how we communicate it and the value that the world places on nature is really important. So I came to the Shark Trust with a real kind of passion for being able to take the communication work that I've been doing at the aquarium and in the aquarium sector and bring it to this work here. And as I said, the Shark Trust already had a real proud kind of history of working with communities and the public. So we've just kind of taken that a bit further. And one of the things that we started to see is that there are some challenges when it comes to sharks. There is a lot of, you can call it misinformation, or you can just call it bad communication, one or the other. There's just a lot of stuff out there that doesn't accurately represent where we are, and I think it's really important that we get the message out clearly. And so we started looking at what sort of messaging is out there already. What is the world being told about sharks? What is the world being told about shark conservation? We started looking at that, and there are other people around the world kind of doing this work and kind of pulling together what's on social media, what's going out in the media, what's going out through aquariums, what's going out through film and television. So we started to develop some ideas around how we could try to influence that narrative, how we could try and change the narrative a little bit. And one of the things that we've done over the last couple of years is work with social scientists to create a toolkit which really kind of highlights it highlights some key things that we're doing wrong. So it highlights some key kind of traps. So Ralph, the person that I work with very closely on this toolkit, he looks across the range, across the spectrum at our communication as well, and just said, when you say this is what you think you're saying, but this could be what other people are hearing. And so he identified a number of these traps that we call them, that we fall into. And then based on those traps, we kind of built this toolkit for people in our sector, for people who are educators, for people who are working for NGOs or working in aquariums, to just kind of make these these kind of common traps, bring them to the fore, and then give us tools and tricks to stop falling into those traps. So this toolkit we put together has been published and it's out there and being shared all over the place. And we hope that will make a difference, along with some other work that we've been doing with aquariums around the world, to try to kind of change that messaging and change that way that we're being talked about. How we talk about sharks and how we talk about shark conservation. It's really important.
And I think it's like so important, just because the words we use, we're used to them because we hear about them every day. A bit like earlier when we were like fisheries management, not everyone's going to even know what fisheries management is. Like that sounds boring. It sounds like management, you hear management, you switch off. But could you talk about some of the traps, maybe give like an example, just so we kind of understand those?
Well, yeah, okay, so what the first trap that we highlight is myth busting. So this idea, and we call it the octopus trap because each trap is named after a marine animal. And so myth busting, the thing with myth busting is we think we're helping the situation when we myth bust. Oh, this isn't like that, it's like this. But when you say this isn't like that, you're re-energizing that argument. So the classic example that Ralph always uses is President Nixon in the 1970s. He famously went on TV because he was being accused of all sorts. Famously went on TV and told the world to the camera, "I am not a crook." And in the minds of the viewers, that just said he's a crook. Like, why is he saying he's not a crook? He must be. And that kind of whole idea of myth busting and how you deal with that. So maybe it would have been better to go out and say, "I am an honest man." That would be better than saying I'm not a crook. So it's very subtle, but it's kind of turning this idea on its head a little bit. And rather than saying this is not that, you just go out on the front foot and talk about what something is. So there's a classic one with sharks, which I'm not going to talk about, but it's out there. And so many, including us, so many organisations do this thing where they say this is not that. And actually, we need to change the way we go about that, and we need to be more positive about sharks. I believe what we need to be doing, and we make the call to divers, scuba divers who spend time with sharks. Tell everyone those positive stories, because that's what we need. We need to bombard, like love bomb the world with positive stories about sharks, because so many people have positive experiences with them. And then when you open the newspaper, when you see the news, all you hear about is negative experiences. So we need to be much, much clearer about those positive stories. So that's one of them. And then, another one, just an example, which, there's one around using the language, and what means one thing to me means another thing to someone else. So we need to make sure that the language we're using suits the audience that we're talking to. And then another one is about using language which is or avoiding language which sounds like you're not really sure. So it's avoiding, we're going to try and do that, or we think we can achieve this. We have to be much more positive about saying, we can do this. Yeah. We can make this change, and we have to make sure that the world believes that we can make a difference, working together, collaboratively, collective action. We can actually make a positive change, rather than kind of, we think we could if we were lucky, kind of thing. So yeah, those are some examples. There's I think there are 7 in all traps. So I won't waste your time.
But I think that last one's...
It's available on the Shark Trust website, obviously. Yes. The whole toolkit for free.
I think it's really important, kind of that last one being almost talking positively about what you can achieve, because it's kind of shown that we can achieve it. Like over the 25 years of the Shark Trust, they have achieved so much already, even before we were here.
Yeah, it is really. I definitely think if we're trying to convince the world the whole time that that what we're doing is worthwhile. We're trying to convince people who give us money. We're trying to convince people who give us their support. We're trying to convince people who lend us their voice through campaigns that actually what they are doing will make a difference. And so therefore we have to be very clear that we absolutely believe in what we're doing, and we absolutely believe that what we're doing is the right thing to be doing and can make a difference. So yeah.
And if someone wanted to help right now, what are the 3 things that you'd be like, these are the ways you can help us right now, these are the things that are going to make the big impact for Sharks and Rays right now?
So the first one's really subtle. I'd say the first one is just and I mentioned it already, just getting anyone who's slightly interested in Sharks and Rays to get really interested in it and tell everyone. It's like learn and share, learn and share, learn and share. The more people that are talking about, the more people that are talking about the diversity of Sharks and Rays, that it's not just the kind of the couple that we hear about all the time, that there's these amazing group of animals that have all of these different characteristics and behaviors and lifestyles and shapes and sizes, and talk about them. So really just learn and share is like a really key thing. Anyone can do it. It's free. Yeah, and when I was growing up, when I was a kid, for me to find information on sharks would have been pretty tricky. I mean, literally, I know you find this hard to believe. I would have had to go to an encyclopedia and find the page about sharks, and it's easy now. It's such an easy thing to do. We are bombarded with information on the internet. Find good quality information sources and learn and share. The second thing I would say is about we in our sector need to be funded. So anyone that can help us in that, whether that's giving a donation, becoming a Shark Trust member, whether it's becoming a fundraiser, going out and running a marathon and raising money from friends and family, anything that we can do to make sure that we've got the resources we need to not only to do what we're doing, but to accelerate and to expand what we're doing, that's a really key thing. And then the third one is really about voice. I think it's about using your voice and your influence. So if there are campaigns out there that you believe in, give your voice. It's free. So that's the heart of our Big Shark Pledge campaign, for example. It takes a minute, 2 minutes to lend your voice to that campaign, but that gives us power. That gives us, we walk into these meetings with, an army of supporters behind us, and that's a really, really valuable thing. So yeah, I think learn and share, help us to fund what we do, and lend us your voice. Those would be 3.
And I think those are, 3 simple things people can do. And not only does it massively support us, but you feel better for it if you do those. For example, I liked sharks growing up. They were kind of like the dinosaur for me. I became a fundraiser. That's when I met you. I learned about actual shark conservation, and because I didn't really know anything about it then, realised, they were in a sticky situation. So did fundraising, and now.
Yeah, now you're part of learning and sharing, because you're doing this and you're helping other people to learn and share. You're part of giving us more money because you help us. You do all the fundraising work, and you are working on the campaign, which is helping us to gather people's voices in. So yeah.
So I think it just highlights how much impact an individual can have.
Absolutely.
And then if you have all of that together, it does create this kind of almost army where everyone is connected with that shared voice.
Yeah. Collective action. I'm massively into collective action. It's one little thing from lots of people. Many, many drops make an ocean. The more we can kind of pull people together and coordinate. And it's much easier these days because we have technology, we have the internet, we can create communities of interest, and we can collectively have a big voice and a big impact.
And with this huge impact, you talked about sharing stories, like your experiences with sharks for divers and stuff like that. And we're getting to the end of the episode, and I know you've had some incredible encounters with sharks.
Not as many as I'd like.
Not as many as you like. You always want more. I think that's the problem. You're like more every day. But could you say what is your all-time favourite experience with Sharks and Rays, and why? Why was that? How did you feel?
I mean, they're quite varied. I've had to say, there's always more. There's so many shark and ray diving, swimming with experiences that I've yet to have. And it's, I've got some years left in my life, I hope, that I'll be able to fulfill some of those dreams. I'd say that the one that really stands out in my mind was last year, when we'd heard about. I've always been aware of sand tiger sharks because in aquariums they're a very popular species, and so I've always seen sand tiger sharks. I've swum with sand tiger sharks in aquarium exhibits, but I'd always heard about this experience on the east coast of the US, where there are a number of wrecks on the down the coast, and that sand tigers congregate around these wrecks because you get all the bait fish there congregating around the wrecks, so the sand tigers go there to feed. So we happened to be going to a thing in Florida. We happened to go to SharkCon in Florida, and so we thought, well, it's not that far out of our way. So Caroline and myself took a kind of little detour on the way to Florida, went to North Carolina, and went on this dive out on a wreck. It was about like an hour out on a pretty fast, pretty bumpy ride. And then when we got there was one other boat there, which divers came up, they went, so then was just us. And yeah, we put a shot line down, descended down this shot line, and there were, well, we don't know how many, but probably, let's say 100. I think it was about 100 sharks that were just cruising constantly around this wreck, and the so many fish there, and the wreck was beautiful as well, and just that it's just one of the most wonderful dives I've ever had. And they're such a sort of, they're a strange shark. They're very big and very heavy, muscly looking things, but they just cruise very slowly. They're very kind of placid. Their tail beat is really, really slow, and so you can just kind of get in and swim alongside them and underneath them and over them, and you're just sort of just finning along, just surrounded by these amazing, pretty chunky sharks. It was beautiful. I'd recommend it to anyone who happens to be lucky enough to be in North Carolina.
Yeah, no, that sounds incredible. And I've seen the pictures of it, I've seen footage. You got 360 degree footage
we
of it?
tried out. I mean, what a place to try it out. We had this 360 camera with an underwater housing, so we, when we went down on the second dive, we just basically put a weight on this camera, stuck it on the wreck, went off and did our dive and came back, and the 360 footage is amazing. So yeah, we're looking at, we've been working with a organisation locally that has an immersion dome, looking at how we can kind of give more people that experience vicariously through these films. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, that sounds, yeah. I was very jealous when you spoke about that, and I was like, oh,
sorry,
I'm not doing that yet.
Maybe
one day. And then final question. I was going to ask what your favourite shark was, but I know that's obvious because I already know it.
Do you?
So, yeah, I do. Blue shark.
Okay.
Yeah. But, so I thought I'd ask you what you think the best shark is. So I don't know if it'd be different or not.
Okay. Ooh. I think it's the Greenland shark.
Why?
They're just so weird and cool. They're just something about the Greenland shark that I just think is super cool. Because they're, I know you're
I was
looking at
not
me
expecting.
Well, best is it's a subjective term.
I don't know if it should be
It's a very, very slow shark which lives in deep, dark water. They're most of them are kind of blind, essentially. And yet they eat everything. Look at how they manage to do that. It's amazing because they're so slow and blind. So I think they are very, very cool sharks. I really didn't know very much about them at all until I was invited, maybe 3-4 years ago. I was invited by the Polar Institute, Scott Polar Institute, to go and do a lecture. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I don't know what to talk about. So I researched Greenland sharks. And ever since then, I've been a total fan. Just love them.
That is mental. But So these...
Is that... I love that, I've thrown you.
So these are... A bit about green sharks. So they like 7 meters long or something, aren't they?
Yeah, 6.5 meters.
Yeah.
So I think they're second biggest carnivorous shark species, yeah.
Live for up to 400 years, maybe more.
Theoretically, yes.
Theoretically.
Yes. Late to mature.
Late to mature, yeah.
Yeah.
And you said that they're blind.
They have, they have vision, and then they have these parasites that grow out of their eyes that reduce their vision to the point where they're almost completely blind. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've got a list of things that have been found in the stomach contents of Greenland sharks, and it just goes on forever. And it includes like polar bears and dogs and moose and squid and Arctic foxes. Also, I mean, they just manage somehow to they're scavengers basically.
Yeah. I was gonna say, if you're really slow, blind, and basically live in the dark Arctic waters, you're probably just going to eat whatever falls in front of you.
Yeah. But think about that whole 400 years. There are sharks in the ocean that could have been around for 400 years or more. And think about that's Shakespearean times when they were born. That's ridiculous. And that when they were sort of middle age was when the Titanic was drifting past them. That it's just incredible, that amount of time for an animal to live and still be around. That blows my mind.
That is mind-boggling. Yeah. Thank you very much. Good answer, and well done for throwing me off.
It's a pleasure, anytime.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you'd like to listen to more episodes, you can subscribe and like this podcast, and also share it around. More episodes will be coming out every 2 weeks. If you'd like to learn more about the work we do at the Shark Trust, you can also visit the Shark Trust website at www.sharktrust.org, and you can find us on all social media platforms as well. So thank you for listening, and hopefully see you next time.
Hey, I'm Hetty. Thanks for listening to the Shark Trust podcast. Did you know that you can support our work protecting sharks and rays? Here's just some of the ways you can help today. Join our community of passionate shark supporters and gain access to exclusive events and content by becoming a Shark Trust member. You can adopt these incredible animals, directly supporting our conservation efforts and research projects. Make a donation today. Every donation makes a huge difference. Your contribution will go towards funding our vital work all across the world. And finally, if you want to get more hands-on, you can take part in our citizen science projects. Your data and observations are invaluable to understanding the world of sharks. Together, we can make a difference. Visit our website to find out more and take action today.